Gentles and ladymen, children of all ages, trolls and derps, freaks and geeks alike, welcome to the Goosewine channel, bringing you Eerie Gaming. I almost got the name mixed up. 2015's Undertale, by now famous indie developer Toby Fox, has been one of the biggest surprise hits of recent times. And that success spawned with it an almost even bigger media phenomenon in Deltarune. All signs are pointing in the direction that Toby Fox will be remembered as one of the most well-known developers and even more general artists of our time. Yet he hasn't let any chance at fame or fortune get in the way of his own creative vision. And that's just super interesting. And that creativity of his does come with a surprising amount of creepy stuff. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Deltarune or Undertale for that matter are horror games or even slightly in that direction. What I am saying is that there are a lot of tiny details, small things in the background of his games that could fit in perfectly in a creepy RPG Maker game like Corpse Party. I am perfectly confident that Toby could probably put together one of those creepy RPG Maker games himself. That's not the point that I'm trying to make. What I am trying to make is that he puts all these weird little creepy things in these games that are otherwise pretty, not wholesome, I would say. I think wholesome is maybe a step too far, but they're not horror games. And that's why we'll be going through some of those things in these games to look at what they mean, why they're there, and why they're so fucking weird. Now before I go forward, I want to make one thing very clear. This first part will only be going through Undertale. The second part of this video will be all about Deltarune. I'll talk about the bunker and some other things I don't want to spoil, so I'll stop listing them. But with that out of the way, let's just get into the video. In Undertale, we as the player follow the character of, well, they're referred to as Frisk by fans. I'm pretty sure it's also the canon name, but due to the fact that we can name the character ourselves, I figured I'd just mention it, you know. Quickly, we scroll through a short lore dump before being literally dropped into the game. Landing in the monster-filled underground, we encounter numerous amounts of those eponymous monsters. And although that name might be reminiscent of those classic movie villains like Frankenstein and Nosferatu, none of them are particularly scary. I mean, they're endearing, well-written, designed, and genuinely super fun to interact with, but they're not scary. I mean, sure, Flowey has some scary moments. Hell, I personally still think Omega Flowey's design is kind of eerie. Not scary, but the mix of Photoshop pictures is just a style of image that gets to me personally, but it's not creepy. That's not to say that there's nothing creepy in Undertale though, because if there wasn't, this video would not exist. You get the gist. And to start that off, we can talk about fun values. If you didn't know, Undertale records a secret value in every newly started save called a fun value. This value is randomly decided upon starting a new playthrough and can cause a plethora of different random scenarios in the game. Now, not all of these events are scary, but they can be weird. For example, we have the wrong number song. This is an event that can only occur if your game has a fun value between 2 and 39. If this requirement is met, and only if, the player can, upon entering the river person area, be met with a mysterious phone call. For a short moment, their phone will ring before hearing this. Not particularly creepy, but still kind of cool. What is kind of creepy is the Gaster followers. With a fun value between 61 and 63, you have a 50% chance to encounter one of the Gaster followers. Two of these are grayed out versions of normal NPCs that can be countered anywhere else in the game, while the third and last is an entirely unique NPC. Their unilateral grayscale already gives them an eerie vibe, along with the feeling that two of them feel like strange clones of their original forms. But what's even creepier is what they have to say.
Um, okay, now that's kind of creepy. At first glance, this might seem like it's just kind of weird dialogue for the sake of weird dialogue. I mean, that final line, that's tailor made just to give you the chills. But when you dive into it, you uncover an interesting story, one completely centered around one person in particular. Dr. W.D. Gaster is one of the most elusive characters in recent gaming history. If anything, he's akin to this generation's G-Man, a dark and mysterious character, one pulling strings behind the shadows while never being directly in the spotlight. But beyond that, he's also interesting on his own. That mystery also comes with its drawbacks. There's not much we know about Gaster. His wiki page is surprisingly pretty big when you account for that fact, but most of that page real estate is taken up by speculation, theories, and the meager amount of clues that we do have. But from all of that, there is a specter of a profile we can't pull for this mystery man. Dr. W.D. Gaster was Asgore's royal scientist before Alphys took up that role, and ostensibly, he was pretty damn good at his job. I mean, he created the core, the huge magical generator that provides energy to the whole underground, you know? He was a loyal servant to King Asgore, an illustrious genius and a mentor to the current royal scientist Alphys. That was until he miraculously disappeared. Like I said before, there's not much we know about him, and that includes what exactly happened to him. But from what we can gather, there seems to be one consensus. He was taken by his own creation. But Gaster is more elusive than even that, because as much as fan art would have you believe otherwise, we don't really know what Gaster looks like. We have some pointers, but nothing concrete. One of those pointers is room 269. This room is once again a fun value event, only appearing if the fun value of your save is 66. If this condition is met, a mysterious door will open near one of Waterfall's save points. Upon entering the room, this will happen. What the fuck is that? Sorry, that one caught me off guard. This guy just looks so fucking creepy. Go on, go on. So that was weird. Like you could see in the video, interacting with this mystery man, his actual name in the files, causes him to disappear with only a sound effect to signal his goodbye. Leaving the room causes it to disappear. Now, while this whole event is creepy, I don't necessarily see how this is linked to Gaster. I think the amount of fan art that's come out of the assumption that this is Gaster is super cool, but personally, over the years, I've come to think that maybe the second mysterious character is a real Gaster. Or maybe I'm the real Gaster, you know? I don't know. In room 272, once again a hard to access room, the player will be greeted with another eerie sprite, although this one is visually very different from the mystery man from before. This ghostly apparition slowly becomes less transparent as the player approaches it, eventually becoming wholly corporeal once they come close enough. And also, unlike Mystery Man, the player can actually interact with this NPC. Now, you might be thinking, that's not English? Well, it actually is. It's just in Wingdings. This is actually already a pretty big connection to Gaster, but it's not the biggest. Upon leaving the room Redacted resides in, the player arrives in the sound test room. Once there, they can play a variety of sounds, like a, a sound test. And when I say variety, I mean like 4 sounds. 3 of the 4 seem to be short jingles, but the 4th one, well, just listen. Colloquially, this theme is known as Gaster's theme, and outside of the fact that it's almost outright bone chilling, it's also an unequivocal link back to Gaster. In my opinion, all the facts point to Redacted being Gaster and not Mystery Man. But with the fandom's adoption of Mystery Man's design for Gaster, the G-Man himself, well, who knows what Toby will decide in the future. I mean, as a quick aside, we all know Toby, like, really values his fandom and, like, having his fandom interact with his art, his games. I mean, the first Undertale has like a few fan characters in it. Yes, they paid for it on Patreon, but still, that's really, I feel like if Toby's original plan was to make redacted Gaster, that probably has changed by now due to the fandom. But I'll keep the fandom talk in this video to a minimum. I'll make another fandom video in the future. Let's just get back to creepy gaming. Now, again, you might be thinking, what is Wingdings even? And I have the answer. I answered the question myself. Wingdings is a font that comes standard with Microsoft Word that basically displays letters in a sort of hieroglyphics. I don't have the time to get into why it exists and all that. All you need to know is that it does exist. And what you also need to know is that this font is heavily associated with Gaster. And that fact can be placed squarely in the hands of missing journal entry 17. In the mysterious room 264, hidden deep within the files of Toby Fox's masterpiece, lies a journal entry obscured from the general populace in more ways than one. Here's what it reads. Whew, okay, now that's eerie. This feels like the true culmination of the Gaster story. It's not just the actual words being spoken, it's the whole vibe, the context of it, and the voice itself. It's all just so creepy when put together. But we don't really have that full context just yet, because this is journal entry 17 of what? Where are the first 16 entries? And that brings us to the true lab. Earlier in this video, I touched on Alphys and her involvement with Gaster. She was his apprentice and his successor, and they worked practically side by side. And aside from their work on the core, their efforts went into one more project. Throughout the game, Alphys is portrayed as kind of, well, I wouldn't call it incompetent, but not especially smart. Book-wise, a genius, but socially, tactically, or most other ways, kind of lacking. On top of that, her inventions work, but they feel somewhat juvenile. Mettaton's body is probably the best she gets. Overall, Alphys comes off as a very timid scientist, not one capable of the horrific acts often associated with the mad scientist trope. In the true pacifist route, the most prestigious of Undertale's many endings, we dig a layer deeper into Alphys' scientific inquiries. After going back from the game's final boss to help Alphys get the perfect first date with her crush Undyne, the game gives us the reins once again. Ostensibly, the player is meant to go back to the barrier and finish the game, but once they pass through Alphys' lab, something else will get their attention. Wait, what? The truth? What's she talking about? What truth is there left to uncover?
What the fuck?
Seeing this for the first time was one of the creepiest moments I've ever experienced in a game. This isn't how Undertale usually presents battles. This isn't a random encounter or a monster standing in the overworld waiting for you. This monstrous blob just crawls out of the sink after interacting with what you think is just a normal sink. It's fucking terrifying, even without a jump scare. And this isn't the only scary battle entrance in Alphys' True Lab. But, you'll have to find the other ones for yourself. That's not really the point of this segment. One thing established very early in the story of Undertale is determination. It's some kind of ambiguous quality or substance that only humans can effectively harness. This is ostensibly what allows the player character, and other humans for that fact, to save and load. Determination isn't entirely locked to humans, however. In the genocide route, upon fighting, my favorite character, Undyne, she will, instead of dying, tap into her own determination and turn into Undyne the Undying. In this state, she's much more powerful than she is in her normal form, and is also in some form of a quasi-immortality. She's not immortal or invincible, but she's not dying the normal way, let's say that. But what becomes very obvious throughout this fight is that monsters can't keep up the use of determination. Eventually, it melts them down. Literally. And that brings us back to the True Lab. Throughout journal entries, context clues, and VHS tapes, it's heavily implied that Alphys did some tests with determination, along with Gaster. Determination which she extracted from the souls of the previously killed humans. Determination which she used to experiment on other monsters, which in turn turned them into amalgamate monstrosities, a combined, horrifying mass. When you look at it like this, it gets kinda terrifying. Not jump scare terrifying, but the concept itself is honestly really scary. This idea of your own consciousness disappearing into this sort of hive mind, losing what you might have at one point considered to be your sense of self, just gone like that in an instant. Along with that, it's implied that Flowey is a product of these experiments. All of it is just super eerie. And all of this, coming from the affable, seemingly innocent Alphys, is just another layer on top. The fact that someone so nice could do something so horrible is terrifying. And it's a motif that comes back in Asgore too, in his willingness to kill humans for the sake of his own people. It's tragic and a major theme of Undertale, in my opinion. This idea of doing what's right instead of doing what you must. Because eventually, Asgore decides to, with the player's help, find another way to open the barrier, and Alphys decides to work on fixing her mistakes instead of hating herself for them. Undertale is often interpreted as a story of pacifism, of condemnation of violence, but I don't think that's the case. I think it's more of a story of right, of wrongs, and how duty calls those values into question. I could go on a whole spiel about this, but I'll save you the time. Let's just move on to the conclusion.
If this video taught us anything, it's that any game can hide some pretty scary stuff. And I'm not saying Undertale is a horror game or anything, but what I am saying is that it sure is harboring some dark stuff. From creepy flowers to humanoid experimentation, there's a lot in this game that could come straight out of a horror novel. Yet it's all hidden in this sort of wholesome package. And I think that's one of the main reasons why Undertale has gotten so big. Now, this video might be over, but don't worry. My deep dive into Toby Fox's creepier side isn't over just yet.